sixth canto, fifth chapter. Well, there's only one book. Might have to come up a little more. Or maybe we can just bring the whole thing up. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Thank you. Hare Krishna. So I'd just like to express before we begin, it's a great pleasure to be here, and for first time in a long time, and see this new facility. Last time it was just the storefront, you know, and also to see the community has progressed so nicely, you know, and so many more people have joined and coming to Krishna Consciousness. So this is very wonderful. Of course, a little bit connected to what I'm going to speak about this morning, progress cannot always be measured in numbers, you know, but rather real spiritual progress is measured in quality, the quality of our devotion. I'll speak a little bit about that. And so we'll begin. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravana Chahari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravana Chahari Yamuna Tiravana Chahari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Gaura Haribo, 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 Gaura Haribo. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Om Vishnubhara Paramahansa Pribhasha Acharya Ashtotara Shata Srimad Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Sri Prabhupada Ki Jai Nitya Lila Pravishnu Vishnupada Ashtotara Shata Srimad Sri Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Thakur Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Sadhu Swami Ki Prem se kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Samakunda Radha Kundi Giri Govardhan Ki Vrindavan Dham Ki Mayapur Dham Ki Gangamai Ki Jamunamai Ki Tulsi Devi Ki Bhakti Devi Ki Samavata Bhaktivinoda Ki Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Brihat Midanga Ki Jai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru, Shri Gaurang. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we'll read from Srimad Bhagavatam, the 6th canto, 5th chapter, text number 44. Shishuku vacha pratijagraha tadbadam Narada sadhu samata etavan sadhu bhaduhi titikshakteshvara swayam. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Sri Shukadev Goswami continued, "My dear king, since Narada Muni is an approved saintly person, when cursed by Prajapati Daksha, he replied, Tad badham. Yes, what you have said is good. I accept this curse. He could have cursed Prajapati Daksha in return, but because he is a tolerant and merciful sadhu, he took no action." So everyone can please repeat. Sri Shukadev Goswami continued, "My dear king, since Narada Muni is an approved saintly person, when cursed by Prajapati Daksha, he replied, Tad badham. Yes, what you have said is good. I accept this curse. He could have cursed Prajapati Daksha in return, but because he is a tolerant and merciful sadhu, he took no action. Purport. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 3:25-21, Tikshasva karhunika surida sarvadehinam Jatushatrava Shanta Sadhava Sadhubhushana. The symptoms of a sadhu are that he is tolerant, merciful, and friendly to all living entities. He has no enemies. He is peaceful. He abides by the scriptures, and all his characteristics are sublime. Because Narada Muni is the most elevated of sadhus, devotees, to deliver Prajapati Daksha, he silently tolerated the curse. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has taught this principle to all his devotees. Trinadapi sunichena taroriva sahishnuna amanina manadina kirtaniya sada hari. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer respects to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. Following the orders of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, one who preaches the glories of the Lord all over the world or all over the universe should be humbler than grass and more tolerant than a tree, because a preacher cannot live an easygoing life. Indeed, a preacher must face many impediments. Not only is he sometimes cursed, but sometimes he must also suffer personal injury. For example, when Nityananda Prabhu went to preach Krishna consciousness to the two roguish brothers, Jagai and Madai, they injured him and made his head bleed. But nevertheless, he tolerantly delivered the two rogues, who became perfect Vaishnavas. This is the duty of a preacher. Lord Jesus Christ even tolerated crucifixion. Therefore, the curse against Narada was not very astonishing, and he tolerated it. Now, it may be asked, why Narada Muni stayed in the presence of Prajapati Daksha and tolerated all his accusations and curses. Was that for Daksha's deliverance? The answer is yes. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that after being insulted by Prajapati Daksha, Narada Muni should have left immediately, but he purposely stayed to hear all Daksha's strong words so that Daksha might be relieved of his anger. Prajapati Daksha was not an ordinary man. He had accumulated the results of many pious activities. Therefore, Narada Muni expected that after delivering his curse, Daksha, satisfied and freed from anger, would repent his misbehavior and thus get a chance to become a Vaishnava and be delivered. When Jagai and Madai offended Lord Nityananda stood tolerantly, and therefore both brothers fell at his lotus feet and repented. Consequently, they later became perfect Vaishnavas. I'll just read this. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 6th canto, 5th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Narada Muni Cursed by Prajapati Daksha. Om Jnanatimirandasya Ganam Jana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakada Mahyam Tadati Swa Padantikam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastyatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivashari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakapadraviyascha Kripasindhuvyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. So, we have the instance of Narada Muni cursing Manigriva e Nalakuvara. But here we see that a great Vaishnava is being cursed. You cannot curse a great Vaishnava without consequences. No. Of course, Narada Muni, he tolerated out of his compassionate nature, as it's stated here in the very beginning of the purport, that Titikshasva Karunika, Lord Kapila Dev, explains that a devotee Titikshasva Karunika, Suridam Sarvadehinam, that a devotee, these three things are present. These three things are very, very important for our having the proper consciousness to execute or to perform Krishna consciousness. I always put them in an ascending order. Titiksha. There must be tolerance. Tolerance, sometimes titiksha is also referred to as forgiveness. tolerance or forgiveness is the very, very important for a Vaishnava. Actually, there's another purport where Srila Prabhupada says that a devotee, just speaking, it's from the 7th canto, Hiranyakashipu, referring to him doing great austerities. And there Srila Prabhupada says, when a devotee does austerity, the product of that austerity should be forgiveness. A devotee doesn't do austerities to gain power. Demons and materialistic people. Of course, Srila Prabhupada pretty much sees demon and materialist as equivalent. Just that previous demons were more qualified. They were more powerful. And now we have little mini demons. And they're just materialistic people who... but Srila Prabhupada said in one lecture that most people are not demons. They just have demoniac habits because they're being guided by demons. Even Prasad Maharaj, after he was, blessed by Lord Nrsimhadev, and Lord Nrsimhadev offered him blessings. Of course, Lord Nrsimhadev had already decided to give him the blessings that he wanted to give. But he wanted Prahlad Maharaj to make a statement, which is a very important statement. That, my dear Lord, please don't offer me blessings. Meaning that don't leave it up to me. Whatever you want to do is all right. But I don't need blessings. I don't want to do business with you. This is such an important point in our Krishna consciousness, that we have to develop quality in our Krishna consciousness. Just like in the Nectar of Instruction, speaking about quality, Srila Prabhupada says in the preface, which is a very short preface, probably one of the shortest prefaces I've ever seen, 2 paragraphs. And he says at the beginning of the 2nd paragraph, which is something which he really establishes as the purpose of Nectar of Instruction. He says that the advancement in Krishna consciousness depends on the attitude of the devotee. It doesn't depend on the quantity of service, but it depends on the quality of the service. And that quality is determined by our attitude. So what is the attitude of a Vaishnava? The attitude was stated at the very beginning of the Bhagavatam, that devotional service should be bhakti yoga adoksaje ahaitukya pratyata. That these are the qualities. That first of all, it must be directed to Krishna, but Krishna as adoksaja. Srila Prabhupada, depending on how you break it down, adaksha aja. That which is born of the eyes or born of the senses cannot perceive the unlimited nature. He is ada. He is beyond the perception of the senses and the mind and the intelligence. Sometimes because Krishna gives us, as human beings, He gives us intelligence. But the exclusive, as Krishna Himself proclaims, the exclusive purpose of that intelligence, very exclusive, the dhami buddhiyogam tam yenamam upayantite. The purpose of real intelligence is to bring us to Krishna's lotus feet. All other intelligence is just functional, how to function in this world. But we become so bewildered by relativizing everything on the basis of who's more qualified than me and who's less qualified. Let me increase the second category and decrease the first category. There should be less people more qualified and more people less qualified, then the world would be much better. But then if everybody were like me, then I would understand all their defects, and we would be fighting even more than we are already. So Krishna's arranged everything perfectly. So how do we get this quality in Krishna consciousness? The quality that would allow us to be in a situation like this. Somebody curses us. Narada Muni took the curse. No. Of course, Krishna was not very satisfied. No. And we see that already Daksha had been punished, and he still didn't learn his lesson. No. So Krishna had to, because although Daksha was not a first-class devotee, or even principally a devotee, he was a karma yogi, in one sense. And he said this just a few verses before this one. He says to Narada Muni, he's basically saying, I'm a better devotee than you. I worship Vishnu. Of course, I worship many other people also. Of course, that's very common, especially in India. And everywhere. It's not just India. It's just that in India, people know to worship the personification of what they desire, which means some demigod that controls some energies. In the West, they just worship the energy, like money. In India, they worship Lakshmi, hoping to get some money. But in the West, they just worship the money or the power. They don't know the source. So at least in India, people know the source. Of course, nowadays, everything's being classified as mythology. All these things, demigods, Krishna, he was just some historical person. So how do we get this quality, that we could tolerate something like this in a person so puffed up? Sometimes when we see very puffed up people, it's natural to become critical and to avoid them and to, even think negatively about them. That's why, generally speaking, neophyte devotees don't have mystic powers. Srila Prabhupada said, for a pure devotee, they have all mystic powers. A pure devotee has all mystic powers, but they don't use them. Some devotees have used them. Ramanuja used mystic powers. Madhvacharya, very much so. Just to convince the very stern and staunch worshippers of the demigods that Vishnu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and also to counteract the influence of Mayavad philosophy. They use some mystic powers. But our mystic power, we have the greatest mystic power at our disposal for any devotee, if they have enough faith, which is the holy name. That is our... Srila Prabhupada, many times when he was asked, Swamiji, do you have some mystic power? He said, yes. Yeah. He said, by the mercy of the holy name, I have the privilege, not the ability, I'm just paraphrasing, but basically Srila Prabhupada said, I have the privilege through the agency of the holy name to convert people to Krishna consciousness. This is a very, very special thing that Srila Prabhupada could do. Nobody had that power before, since even the time of Narottam Das Thakur. But even Narottam Das Thakur did not convert people like the Mlechas and Yavanas and so many people that Srila Prabhupada convinced and continues to convince them through his books. Just like yesterday was Bhadra Purnima. And on that day, it's very auspicious. Actually, one begins to pave one's path back home, back to Godhead, by giving the Bhagavatam. Now, why is it that it's so special to give the Bhagavatam? Because the Bhagavatam is the greatest gift of knowledge that one can receive. And that knowledge of the Bhagavatam establishes the superior position of bhakti to Krishna bhakti, or Vishnu bhakti, or Krishna bhakti, above everything else. And because Shukadeva Goswami, in giving that blessing, he knew that, he himself was surrounded by, of course there were no Mayavadis, or there may have been some. Most people were Brahmavadis. The first person who really confronted the Mayavadis was Sridhar Swami. He was a Mayavadi. And therefore, when you read his commentaries, it sounds a little bit like Mayavad philosophy. He puts it in those terms because he himself knows what they need to hear. Just like sometimes if we read the 7th chapter of Adi Lila, it's very difficult to understand. The intricacies of Mayavad philosophy are contained there. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spoke that way because he knew how to deal with them. After all, his sannyas guru was a Mayavadi until he got initiated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because when Keshava Bharati, the day of the initiation, Mahaprabhu came to him and he said, "Something very strange happened last night. I had a dream, and one great saintly person gave me the sannyas mantra. So I just wanted to see if it was real or just some imagination. May I say that mantra to you?" And Keshava Bharati, yes. And so he said the sannyas mantra, and he initiated Keshava Bharati. And from that point on, Keshava Bharati became a devotee. So much so that after the initiation, he was so overwhelmed by the chanting of the holy name, he began dancing, and he started going around in circles so fast that all of his clothes flew off. And he didn't even realize it. So these are the effects of chanting the holy name. So, Narada Muni, he is showing the quality of tolerance. So titikshasva. So if you have tolerance, then it's possible karunika. Then it's possible to have mercy. If there's no tolerance, you can't be compassionate. No. If you have no tolerance, you'll just become angry, frustrated, or something when something happens. But if you develop this quality, which is so important, so important that we see it again and again and again, throughout the Bhagavatam, throughout the Bhagavad Gita. The first instruction that Krishna gives, actually Lord Chaitanya took his Shikshastikam, many parts of it directly from Bhagavad Gita. And this part in particular, the first thing he said, you must be humble. Ashochan admashochas from Bhagavadam Vishase Gatasum Agatasum Ba Nanushochanti Panditaha. Arjuna, first understand you're a fool. Then you can make some progress. And then the next thing he says, Tam Tatikshasva Bharata. You must be tolerant. So these two, same thing. Lord Chaitanya said, be humble, because humility is the seed of tolerance. And tolerance, as stated here by Kapila Dev, which in the purport, is the seed of mercy. And then if you become compassionate, then the next condition, Suridam Sarvadehinam. If you have compassion, this is how we can measure our compassion. Am I friendly to all living beings? Or am I friendly to my family members, my friends, and, those people who I meet, who I kind of like? But when somebody insults me, will I be equally tolerant? Will I be equally compassionate? No. So therefore, Narada Muni here is showing how important it is. And Srila Prabhupada states, In order to allow this to happen, to have that degree of tolerance, and to be able to take a curse, what do you need? Trinada Visunichena. You have to, and therefore establishing the quality of our devotional service depends so much on following the Shikshastika. Because Lord Chaitanya says, he glorifies the holy name in the first verse of Shikshastikam, giving 7 progressive symptoms of chanting the holy name. First, cleanses the heart. Second, it cleanses the past activities which force us to work and to operate under the modes of nature. And then the positive start begins. Shayakariva Chandrika Vitaranam. Then you get the blessings of the moon of good fortune, which means Bhakti Devi. And then Vidyavadu Jivanam, then you take on Bhakti, just as if you never give it up, you never separate yourself. There's no departmentalization of, I have my Bhakti department, my financial department, my family department, and then I go back and forth. No, there's only Bhakti. Everything comes under the umbrella, under the shade of Bhakti. And then you progress. No. And then he explains the glories of the holy name, Endurdaivam Edvishami Hajani Nanuraga. Unfortunately, I can't take advantage of the holy name. I'm not attracted. So how do you become attracted? Trinada Visunichena. And especially the quality of Amanina. Very important. So much so that in the next verse, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says it again. He says 8 things in total. Humility, tolerance, not wanting any prestige, and giving all respect to others. Then, how do you do that in a practical way? That's all. Qualities are abstract until you see them manifest in someone. Just like if I say humility, how can you understand humility? But when you see it in a person, and that's why association with the Vaishnavas is so important, because we see Vaishnava qualities in persons who have developed those qualities. Otherwise, it's all theoretical. But then it becomes practical. Lord Chaitanya takes it to the practical platform. Nadana. Well, just like the Bible says, money is the root of all evil. So, nadana. But one can say, well, I have some dana, what am I supposed to do? Give it to the temple? Of course, if I'm temple president, I'll say, yes, of course, why not? No. But, no. Just understand it belongs to Krishna. Just like sometimes people say to me, oh, I'll pay for it. And I'll say, yeah, but whose money is it? No, you're just a caretaker. It belongs to Krishna. You're just the banker. No, it's not yours. You're just administering Krishna's goods. Nadana, najana. Again, first amanina, now najana. It's so dangerous, he mentions it twice. Having followers, prestige, nasundari, the opposite sex, and kavita, fruitive activities. So these are the 8 things that we try to avoid in becoming Krishna conscious. So there are other cases of curses, and we see the devotee always remains the same. Just like Chitraketu, he was cursed. And Chitraketu, what did he do? He offered prayers. What he did was wrong. But why did he do it? He was inspired by Vishnu to do it. Why did Narada Muni do what he did? He was inspired by the teachings of Shastra. When we're inspired in Krishna consciousness, we become part of the minority. Because the devotees in this material world will always be the minority. Here we're the minority. In Vaikuntha, we're the majority. Majority rule. But here, devotees, even if the golden age of Lord Chaitanya becomes so powerful that many people will become Vaishnavas, it's not that everybody's going to be a devotee. Just like when Lord Chaitanya came, was everybody a devotee? No. There's resistance. And in the golden age of Lord Chaitanya, without Lord Chaitanya being personally present, there will always be resistance. But there will be more and more devotees, and devotional service will become powerful. Srila Prabhupada said, if 10% of the population becomes devotees, then the whole planet will become like Vaikuntha. Because that's what it takes. Just like people always say to me, there are so many of you, but actually there's so few of us. Like we would go on Harinam, they see all these people. And if there may be 10 million Christians in one city, but nobody will notice. Or somewhere in the Middle East, everybody's a Muslim, practically speaking, but no one will notice. But when the devotees go out and chant, then it's like, it's so powerful. People don't realize that it's very powerful, and it's affecting their heart. And if they're too attached, then they will have some resistance, a negative reaction. And if they're a little pious, they'll like it. And if they're confused about life, they will take to it, at least for some time, until they, as Srila Prabhupada says in the purport to the third verse of the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, it says, people will take to Krishna consciousness until they solve the motive by which they came, and then there's the danger they will go away. And we see so many people going away. But it doesn't matter. They have the seed of Krishna consciousness planted within their hearts. So this is the nature of the devotee, and this is the quality of devotional service that we need. So Chitraketu, he was smiling. Why did he do that? He himself couldn't understand. Why did Parikshit Maharaj put a snake around Samkhya Muni's neck? It was all Yoga Maya. But that Yoga Maya is to teach us, those of us who are under Mahamaya, how to act and how to behave and how to respond. These are essential teachings in the 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Krishna dedicates about 17 verses to these. How to act, how to not act, how to respond, and how to be, and what should be our consciousness in any circumstance. These 4 things he emphasizes from verse 55 to 68. He's 13 verses. There's some other verses related to it. So, in the case of Chitraketu, even Lord Shiva and even more Parvati were surprised how he reacted. In this case, Narada Muni was hoping that, normally under these circumstances, Vishnu would have just smashed Daksha. But why didn't he do it? Because Narada Muni did what he did and took the curse. First of all, because it was favorable. Otherwise, Krishna arranged it so the curse was favorable. He said, you can't stay anywhere, for any amount of time. Because if you want to enjoy life, you have to stay somewhere and have some facility to enjoy life. But if you can never stay anywhere, then you can never create a situation for enjoyment. But Narada Muni was very happy. Just like when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was cursed by one Brahmin who wanted to enter into the kirtan, the Mahakirtan in the house of Shivas. So he took his Brahman thread, broke it, and he said, I curse you that you will never have wealth and you will never have a family. And Lord Chaitanya said, thank you. Thank you very much. Just what I wanted. So when a devotee gets cursed, it's always favorable for their own devotional service. So they were bewildered. How can he just happily take it upon himself? And so Parvati asked Lord Shiva. Shiva was a little surprised, but he knew, and therefore he responded that Narayana Sarvapare, that devotees like Chitraketu, Lord Narayan is everything to them. Na kutaschana, bibyate. They have no fear. Swarga pavarga narakesh vapi tulyar tadarshinaha. That whether they're in heaven, in these middle planetary systems, or in hell, the only thing they want is to have darshan of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's the only thing they require. And just like a devotee in our modern context, we're happy to have the holy name. In the case of Parikshit Maharaj, when Samikya Muni found out that his son had cursed Parikshit Maharaj, he was so upset, he was very concerned. And he was even thinking, I hope that Parikshit Maharaj will curse my son. Then he has some hope. Otherwise, the Lord will punish him. Just like in the case of Haridas Thakur, whose appearance we celebrated 2 days ago, disappearance. He was cursed by a Gopal Chakravarti. He said, Gopal Chakravarti said, I don't believe what you're saying, that, this chanting can immediately liberate you. Shastras say you have to go through unlimited lifetimes and then to even get liberation. And you're saying it's so easy? If you can't prove that, I will cut your nose off. And Narada Muni said, that's all right. If I can't prove it, I'll cut my own nose off. I won't make you go to the trouble. But that was so heavy that immediately Govardhan and the father and the uncle of Raghunath Das Goswami, they kicked him out, fired him. And Haridas said, don't worry, he's just an ignorant man. You can't blame him. Everybody's ignorant. They don't have bhakti. But the Lord would not pardon him. 3 days later, his nose fell off, his fingers fell off, his toes fell off. There was no hope. So why didn't that happen to Daksha? Because Daksha was in a very prominent position. Even Lord Brahma told Dhruva Maharaj, told Prithu, that, don't kill Indra. This is not good. Even though he deserves it, you don't want to do that. He's such a prominent person in the universe. You'll upset the whole universal peace and prosperity. So don't do it. So in the case of Daksha, the Lord came and blessed him. He punished him. He had already been punished. He punished him in the sense of defeating his false pride to some degree. And the Lord blessed him. And so, but in the case of, in the case of Parvati, obviously the Lord is not going to chastise Parvati, and the Lord made Chitrakeshu behave improperly, or do things improperly by kind of laughing at Lord Shiva. And In the case of Parikshit Maharaj, he himself said, I couldn't have done that. It must have been the Lord's energy. I could not have put a snake around a sadhu. No, it's impossible. I could not have done that by my own desire. And therefore, when he thought, let Parikshit Maharaj curse him. But just as Srila Prabhupada states here, a devotee does not become offended. And then Samiksha Muni thought, it won't happen because tiraskrita vipralabdha. Because a devotee, even if they're cheated, even if they're defamed, or kshapta, even if they're cursed, shipta, even if they're neglected, hatta, even if they're killed, even any of these things happen. No. Nasya tat pratigurvanti, even though they have the power to respond. No. Tad bhakta prabhavo pihi, they will not do it. Although they're very powerful, they could easily counteract, but they won't do it because they understand that everything is under the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So when we accept that, this is the seed of humility. The seed of humility is to understand everything is under Krishna's control. And therefore, let me accept it. And when I accept Krishna's control and Krishna's will as supreme and always acting in every circumstance, then the quality of my devotional service and humility begins to manifest within the heart, and the quality of my devotional service becomes established in my heart. And then my devotional service will prosper. And so Parikshit Maharaj, he showed that he sat and he heard the Bhagavatam until, of course, the fifth day. On the fifth, toward the end of the fifth day, Shukadeva Goswami, he stopped and he said, "Would you like to rest?" This is in the beginning of the 10th canto, the first chapter. And Parikshit Maharaj said, "No." He was thinking, "You want to rest? You want to?" "No, I want to hear." He said, "Previously I thought I was thirsty, and that created the whole problem. Therefore now let my thirst be the desire to hear about the qualities and the fame and the lila of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's what I want. That's the thirst we should have. Not this thirst to enjoy the material energy. Like we all have hunger and thirst for enjoying this world. But this world has nothing to offer us. But the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, has everything to offer us. And we just have to be prepared. No motivations, and be constant. Make devotional service. Krishna describes this as yoga kaushalyam. That the art of yoga means taking this lifetime. Of course, you can do it in 1 second, but generally it takes a lifetime to make sure that everything I do, every thought, karmana manasa gira, or hridvag vapabir vidadha namaste, that makes sure that my thoughts, my words, and my actions are all fully surrendered to the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's hard to do with our actions. It's harder to do with our words, and it's even harder to do with our thoughts. Just imagine if I could make every thought that comes into my mind dedicated to Krishna. Then I know that I'm progressing in devotional service. If you can do your actions, that's in the beginning of the nectar of instruction, yes. Vachya vegam, manasa, but immediately the mind. What about your mind? You may be able to control your actions, but if the mind is not controlled, if the mind is not subjugated and surrenders to Krishna, then the actions will inevitably go back to our previous habits. And therefore Krishna says, apichet suduracharo bhajate mamananyabhak sadhudeva samantavya. That even if one commits abominable activities, of course, in Kali Yuga, what was abominable 5,000 years ago is probably pious activity nowadays. Because Kali Yuga is so abominable. But even if somehow that happens, it may happen. Therefore Krishna said that, because we're in Kali Yuga, and therefore people will fail. But if you can direct your mind to Krishna, and keep your mind, and therefore Krishna says in the beginning of the 7th chapter, Maya saktamana partha yogam yunjan marashrayaha. That real yoga means that you attach your mind to me and understand that I am the supreme objective of everything. Then you will be successful in Krishna consciousness. So that's what we can understand. That, and Srila Prabhupada, just to conclude, he gives the example of Jagai and Madai. Jagai was the leader, Madai was the follower. And therefore, when Madai realized that, he didn't realize immediately what he had done, but Jagai said, that you shouldn't have done that. And because he said that, Lord Chaitanya forgive them. Otherwise, even on Nityananda's plea, he might not have forgiven them. But because Jagai, then Lord Chaitanya said, actually you are one soul within two bodies. Otherwise, if this part of you, the Jagai, realizes what you've done is wrong, then you will be forgiven. Of course, Madai felt so bad after he became a devotee that he met Nityananda Prabhu. And he said, you have appeared, he mentioned all the incarnations, and I have offended you. And he said, therefore, and Nityananda said, you have surrendered to my Lord? There's no problem with me. But he said, no, please tell me what I need to do. No, this is to what extreme we should take our bhakti. He said, Nityananda, well, you can build a ghat. And in that ghat, then people will come and bathe, and their piety and their bathing in the Ganga will be to your credit. No. But Madai felt so bad that he went to the bottom step of the ghat, and everybody that came, he offered them dandavats. No. That's how serious we should be in Krishna consciousness. No. How careful we should be not to commit unnecessary activities, what to speak of aparads, and take every measure possible to make sure that our bhakti will increase more and more and more. And then we can actually become real devotees of the Lord. So these are some thoughts on this verse. Any comments or questions? Yes.
That's a two-part question. First is tolerating. Sometimes we can tolerate so much that we don't take action, or we don't address the situation, and we think it's better to just sit there and be peaceful, or kind of get stepped on. So how do we discriminate, or what are your thoughts on that? Or we kind of take action in the form of tolerance.
I don't see in any of these examples that there's a limit on tolerance, that it's like reaches its boiling point or something, then no more tolerance. No, tolerance is important, so important that it's emphasized again and again and again. And we see, if you examine all the Just like Runty Dave, Runty Dave, how his tolerance was in relation to that which everybody has to do, which is to eat. And he couldn't eat. He had to keep forgiving and being more merciful and being more, and forgive. And finally, he said, well, I'll die, but that doesn't matter. As long as everyone else can be benefited. Doesn't matter if I die. That's to the degree we should be tolerant. And just like, so there is no, sometimes we think, well, if I'm too tolerant or I'm too humble, then people will just take advantage of me. But if we obey Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we don't care if people take advantage of us. And we don't, ultimately, who can take advantage of a devotee? By being so tolerant and being so merciful and being so humble, we see that people get the greatest respect. There may be an immediate reaction by unqualified people, but Prabhupada said the majority of people are ignorant. They're not bad, they're simply ignorant. Because they've committed some sinful activities and they're influenced by demoniac people. But they will respect. When people see these beautiful qualities manifested in a Vaishnava, they may react negatively in the beginning, but ultimately, just like Srila Prabhupada, who could be more qualified to preach? But when he was trying to preach in India, in the beginning, nobody would surrender. Nobody would listen to him. People would just politely, politically say, oh, Swamiji, yes, but nobody did anything. Even Srimati Morarji, she didn't want to help Prabhupada because she thought he'll just, he's just, sometimes people think, well, these sadhus, they're like a little naive. They don't know the real world. He's going to die on the ship and then I'll be legally responsible. She was thinking like that. If I put him on a ship, and then what will Krishna do to me? I killed his devotee. She was thinking like that. And so when Srila Prabhupada came in the beginning, he tolerated. He was cooking every day, and people were coming on drugs, just thinking, oh, Swamiji will make a hot meal. That's a good way to finish off my drug experience for today. Go take a hot meal with the Swami. Prabhupada tolerated it. Until some people were starting to follow. Even one devotee, of course, Mukunda Maharaj, before he was initiated, he had a conversation with one devotee, and devotee invited him, let's smoke some marijuana. And he said, but I don't think the Swamiji will approve. And the devotee said, the other prospective devotee said, oh, it's not a problem. I heard Swamiji say that he used to sell drugs. He was a pharmacist. So how much did Prabhupada have to tolerate with a mentality like that? But because he tolerated, and people began to see when their brains began to, the fog was clearing a little bit in their brains, they could see, who is this personality? And then everybody just gave their lives to Prabhupada. Even people who couldn't, the day after Prabhupada left, I know about dozens, if not hundreds of devotees that just left. They couldn't go on anymore without the presence of Prabhupada. But during that time, they were surrendered. Even though they made so many mistakes, and we all made so many mistakes, but it was the effect. So the more we can manifest Vaishnava qualities, then the more ultimately our preaching will be successful. And we shouldn't worry that people will take advantage. Krishna will protect us. If we are actually doing our very level best to be a pure Vaishnava, then Krishna will protect us. And if we're in a situation where people are taking advantage, actually no one can take advantage of a pure devotee. They may think they are. It may appear that way. But they can never do that, because Krishna will arrange everything for his devotee. And if he arranges that the devotee has to go through some hardship or difficulty, for the devotee it's the same. This is how Chitraketu responded to Parvati. He said, it doesn't matter, punishment or reward, it's all the same. It's all coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If I deserve to be punished or I deserve to be rewarded, that's not my decision. It's not that I favor one over the other. Both are beneficial. No. Just like a child. A child will rebel against punishment. But the parents know, in spite of whatever the child thinks, that he must be punished and rewarded. Both things must be there. No. Otherwise the child will not have the proper upbringing. No. Just like Prabhupada told the story of the young man, his aunt would always pamper him and spoil him when he was a young boy, give him everything he wanted. And then he became a criminal. And he was sentenced to death. And so his aunt, oh, my poor boy. And she started saying, what can I do? And he said, please come here. She came, said, come, I want to tell you something. She went again, and he bit her ear. She said, why did you do that? Because you spoiled me. You never gave me any punishment. No. And here I'm being killed. No. So, punishment is important, and a devotee, it's just a child will not realize it. And afterwards they realize it, like after they're growing up. And sometimes we don't realize it either until we're growing up. But if we don't realize it enough, then we'll commit aparads and we won't grow up in our devotional service. Otherwise we'll remain spiritual infants, just wanting to enjoy life according to my interpretation of what enjoyment or happiness should be. Okay, so, there's one more quick question, maybe? Okay. Huh? Oh, okay. Well, can we take since he raised his hand, this is the last one, probably the last one anyway, because some people have meeting, other people have breakfast. So both are important.
My question is, like, sometimes what happens is that we forgive somebody asks forgiveness and we forgive, but then in the heart it's not really forgive. Keep thinking, why we did like this.
We haven't purified it enough. We have to keep purifying the heart. The reason we follow our heart so diligently and faithfully is because the heart is the seat of the soul. And the soul is governed by emotion. Because when the soul is in its pure state, everything is emotion. There's no rules and regulations. There's no intelligence to distinguish between this and that. When we're actually pure devotees, there's only the emotion of serving Krishna. In Goloka Vrindavan, nobody needs to have discernment or discrimination. Everything is just flowing. So therefore, because the soul, that's the soul's nature, we sometimes surrender to our material emotions, or our emotions that have become materially influenced. And that's why sometimes we fall back. So thank you all very much for your kind attention. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Garantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Tai Gaur Premanandi.